This is Crosstown Slim again. I just brought you the first segment with John Hutchison, who is going to be hosting our 7th annual Save Our Youth Rally, which is sponsored by the Midtown Church of Christ. Now we have for you a special guest in Brother Denell Howard, who is the pastor of Midtown. And I just want the people to get an idea of who you are before we take off here.
All right. Again, as I was introduced, my name is Denell Howard. I do serve as the minister and evangelist at the Midtown Church of Christ. Been serving there for about 7 years. About 7 years I've been there. Been working very hard at trying to build a work that is respected in the community, not only in the community, but with the people that are there that's serving with us. We have a very simple yet profound vision for every member of that congregation, and that is that every member possess at least 4 qualities. That is, that we're sound in our doctrine, we're healthy in our understanding of the Word of God. If everybody would be healthy in their understanding of the Word of God, I believe it produces a clean life. Brother Hutchison talked earlier about not necessarily being hypocrites or trying to be perfect, but producing a clean lifestyle. We encourage every member there to have at least a clean lifestyle, one that is progressing toward being healthy in whatever area. And then our third point is that every person is friendly in spirit. A healthy understanding of the Word of God produces a clean life, and it produces a friendly spirit where you can find joy and peace and love and happiness and long-suffering and all those things. And then fourthly, we anticipate, and our vision is for every member to be aggressive in their work for Christ, such as Brother Hutchison. And we use the word aggressively purposely because we don't believe in reacting. We believe in being proactive in the things that we want to do and the things that we want to accomplish. And so having a guy like John Hutchison on board as a member of that congregation and taking over and taking this youth rally to places that it has never been before, and continuing to project forward in a visionary sense is one of the things that we try to produce there at the congregation. We have served that community well, I believe. If you look back at our track record, you can find us being on the scene when people have been murdered. We were there when the young man, unfortunately, was murdered right on the corner there. We were there that very Wednesday night. Yes, sir. We were there that very Wednesday night praying when the young people were shot at the under 21 club. You can look back in your newspapers, your clippings, you'll find that we were there to gather that unity of those pastors, and we had almost 200 some odd people out there praying there. So we've been very proactive in our calls, not necessarily trying to promote the church, but to promote God, period, in this community and bring some sense of awareness to the area in which we serve. So that's what we've been doing.
Let me ask you a personal question. First of all, you can't help but notice that you're a young man. You know, and I know young is a relative term, but could you just tell us how old you are, if it's possible to tell us how old you are and how long that you have been a pastor and how long that you were involved in the church before you had your calling to pastor or minister?
Well, I'm 35 years old. I didn't grow up in the church. My grandmother, grandfather were devout church people. My grandmother still is. My grandfather was a deacon at the Baptist church in the town we grew up in. My mother was like most mothers who were raising children in the 70s and the 80s, you know, during that culture and that time. We went to church. We were what I call CME Christians, you know, Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. You know, we went on those days, you know, when we spent the night with Granny. We went to church.
That's right.
But I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up in it like people would accept pastors doing growing up and then becoming pastors. I was a neighborhood guy. Ran with the best of them. Had fights with the rest of them, if you will. We took a long path to get here. Had a desire to try to help children. Start working with a church in Indianapolis. When I started working with that church, we would go to the juvenile centers and things like that and talk to young men about taking a different direction in life. And doing that, began to come up to the city of Muncie. I had never heard of the city. Was sent up here to the city to preach at the church for a couple of Sundays. After a couple of months of doing so, began to become more involved, and then the local pastors there in the city decided that it would be best or be fitting if I were to serve this congregation. Yeah, I didn't grow up in church, man. So I understand these young people.
So you ain't a native of Muncie. Now that's
I'm not afraid of it. You know, I didn't grow up in the church. I'm not saying that other pastors are or whatnot. I'm just saying that being 35, I understand my responsibility to the generation that I believe is lost, because I'm a 70s baby, you know, raised in the 80s, and I understand the mentality of those men, those people who are out there, and so I can reach them with a relevant word. I think a lot of times it isn't that the word of God has become irrelevant, but I think that we're trying to reach a generation with irrelevant tactics, and we're trying to make them be the 70s, the 60s. These are children, if we're honest. These are children who are born with crack addictions. These are children who are born with alcohol addiction. These are children who are born with a sense of hopelessness. These are children who are birthed into a community that has said to them before they're even able to speak that you are not going to be successful because you live in Muncie, Indiana.
Wow.
And so you have to minister to them from that position, understanding that small towns all function the same. You know, they all function the same, and it is very difficult to try to minister to children who have yet to see anything outside of this city.
And that's what we was talking about earlier. Brother Hutchinson was mentioning it, man, just in general conversation, how there's a lot of people in this town, Muncie, Indiana, but it's not necessarily just about Muncie, but small towns that never ever leave their town.
Absolutely. And even if you consider, and you made this point that you know, we're not necessarily dealing with race, but consider the ratio. 11 to 13% African American in this city. Okay. Now, with such a small number, a percentage of African Americans in this small town, with such a large percentage of a majority, whenever something comes to the town, who's the first to take part of that new thing that came to town? And then you get it secondarily. So when you got it, it's already been touched, it's already been handled, it's already damaged goods. And then it's passed to you to do what you can. Now, historically, we've done the best with what we can. We've done the best with what we have. But when do we move to the front line? When do we move to the front line? You've got to be in a position where you are empowering, educating, and enlightening young people, that they can move to the front line. It isn't a fairy tale to be John Hutchinson. It can be done. Those goals are attainable. And you can be from Muncie, Indiana.
That's right. And
be the first to graduate in your program, and not just graduate because they needed one to graduate, but graduate with great grades and graduate with great hope and great ambition and early. And you can do that. You don't have to just settle for Section 8, welfare, food stamps, hanging on the corners. We spoke earlier. One of the biggest problems that the guys of my generation did not help or have not helped the younger generation. Because we're standing on the very corners, and I love you brothers who stand on that corner, but you know you're wrong. You need to move off of that corner. You need to move on, scaring people from walking on that corner. But we stand on the very corner, and all we do all day is talk about yesteryear. And I see it and I witness it, and I'm telling you, it's not just Muncie. It's in the small towns of America. The guy who played the greatest basketball he could in high school, didn't get his grades, never amounted to anything but a park legend. Now he sits on the corner. He's got a little something in his pocket. You know you do. You ain't moving no mountains, but you working. I ain't knocking you. But you standing there all day with that little work, drinking that little drink, you know, doing your little thing, chasing after these little high school girls because they're the only ones that are infatuated with your story.
Oh, man.
The older sisters have seen you. They've been there, done it, so they keep riding.
You talk bad about them. When their sister who ride by, who got a family and don't want to hear that nonsense you talking about because it don't help. There's nothing that you saying that can benefit her or her children's life.
At all.
She's a You call it
absolutely.
I can't even think of. I can't say the names.
Right, because she's no longer excited about what you did your 10th grade year when you took the team to the championship round, scored 25 points, whatnot, this, that, and the third. She's no longer interested in that. Now she has children who are trying to take their team to the championship round.
In college too, though, and keeping on going.
So you can only molest our children. And you know you need to stop.
Hey, man.
You need to stop. We got young ladies who walk past. It's saddening to see. And I hope some of those young ladies see this video, and I hope some of those older men see this video. It's saddening to see young 16, 17-year-old sisters walking past our very corner being hollered at by 35, 40-year-old guys who really should be their fathers, who really should be out talking to them, trying to encourage them and empower them to be great. Amen. You're sitting there trying to see how you can get involved. Doc, that's called statutory rape. And you're wrong. Love you to pieces, though. God bless you.
It's a sexual predator.
Absolutely.
You know, because that's when you was describing that, I was picturing like a lions sitting and watching a small gazelle or something straight from the pack.
Absolutely.
And how they'll zero in on her and start figuring out ways to trap her.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was in the introduction. How you've been 7 years now at Midtown Church of Christ, and I can't help but notice that this is the 7th annual Save Our Youth Rally. So you've been involved since the beginning.
Absolutely. When I came, I met John Hutchinson when I came to Midtown, and he had this great idea, this great goal that he just wanted to try to tell some kids his story and that they could make it. And so we began to build this platform because it was relevant. It was relevant. It wasn't just a platform of let's celebrate a preacher, let's have a pastoral anniversary day. No, it was a platform of how can we save some young people.